Welcome to Mass Hysteria 101, where we all become completely confused together and see ghosts passing in the night. I welcome you all with all my heart. I love you all. I wanted to talk about confusion today in spirituality because I was looking back of all the satsangs I've given. The one that had the highest readership was where I spoke about confusion. And it was like 4 or 5 or 6 times as much as the second highest. So I plan to revisit confusion today. All confusion is in the mind. No mind, no confusion. All confusion is between which concept is correct, which way to go is correct, what teacher to study with is correct, what philosophy to believe in is correct, whether it to be jnana, bhakti, Kashmir Shaivism, Christianity, goes on and on, Advaita. It's all in the mind. If you lose your mind, there's no confusion. But I used to shut down my mind by force of will, by cutting off thoughts when they arose. And pretty soon I couldn't think anymore, and it became rather hard to function in the world. So then I began to allow myself to think again, and I became confused. This was many years ago. So I figured I'd settle everything, get 3 books, one by Ramana, one by Philip Kapleau, The 3 Pillars of Zen, and the third one was Who Am I by Ramana. And I'd get a job on a ship, working on a ship, reading those 3 books and understanding what was my path, what is the ultimate truth, what should I do. I made an enormous discovery. When you work on a ship 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, you have no time to read. You're too exhausted from the physical work to read. And the people you hang around with are just as likely to throw you overboard as to say hello. So if you ever contemplate trying to find yourself by working on a ship, don't do it. This is the first major truth I'm passing to you today. To escape confusion, do not work on a boat, whether it's a cruise ship, a cargo ship, an ore carrier. Do not work on the boat. The next thing I did is, okay, that wasn't such a good idea. Let's try living in the desert. My brother had a place outside of Tucson, in the desert of Tucson. And I went there maybe March, maybe February, and I lived in a tent within about a mile of his property. And around me at night, I could hear cows walking around, hoping they wouldn't step on my tent. When I went to shit and was squatted down, I found huge scorpions right underneath my balls, which scared the hell out of me. And then there were mine shafts around, and I looked in this one mine shaft, and that must have been a 10-foot long rattlesnake crawling inside the mine down into the shaft. And after a while, I began getting the idea, this is not an environment that's really, graceful or helpful for meditation. For the life of me, I found a hard time, difficulty meditating because of all of the distractions from the wildlife. Fortunately, my tent was bug proof, so I didn't have to deal with the bugs inside. I met some crazy people in the desert. I met a treasure hunter who lived in a trailer in the middle of nowhere, who had map after map superimposed on each other where Jesse James was supposed to bury gold or bullion and these kinds of things. And he had a metal detector and he'd go out into the desert. I met many strange people in the desert. And then in June, it was getting hotter and hotter, and the tent was unbearable. So I started staying over at my brother's place, which had air conditioning. But one day I was outside near my brother's house, thinking of helping to expand his house, adding a room or two over a basement that he had dug for him. And it was 114 degrees in the shade. That's probably 46 or 47 degrees for you centigrade people. And there was no hiding from the sun except standing behind a large cactus. And on top of that, when you walk around, they have these cactuses called cholla that broke off into little balls with very prickly needles on them that kept constantly getting in my ankle no matter what I did. I'd walk forward, it'd stick on the front of my shoe, and then as I was walking forward with my one foot, it impacted the ankle of my other foot, and I would have embedded cactus, which could not be removed with the fingers because the needles stuck into the fingers too. So I learned a second great truth. Do not go into the desert thinking you're going to practice alone and accomplish anything in terms of meditation. So I returned to civilization, as it were, and I decided to go to Philip Kapleau in New York, Rochester, New York, where he had a beautiful Zen center. And I sat there for a while, and the people were very noisy meditators. They were very much into showing how intense was their meditation by breathing. And we had those air breathers all over, trying to show everybody how deeply concentrated they were by doing sort of pranayama. And people went around hitting you on the back with a stick if your posture wasn't perfect. Well, I didn't get accepted for permanent membership by Philip Kapleau, but while I was there, inside of the Zendo, I saw a sign that said Sesshin, Mount Baldy Zen Center in California with Sasaki Roshi. So I left New York and Rochester, which is a beautiful, beautiful city, with no understanding of Zen whatsoever, going to go to a 3-month retreat at Mount Baldy Zen Center. Now, up till this time, I had been practicing alone a lot of meditation, 10, 12 hours a day sometimes. And I was having all kinds of Kundalini experiences, being overwhelmed by the light of the full moon or moonlight, being able to see in the dark where other people couldn't see, like going into a movie theater before the movie started and be able to walk around without the light or without the lights on. I guess the movie would have to be on. And it was so dark most people couldn't see. They were running into me. But I could see perfectly. I went to an aquarium where it's very dark and just lighted aquariums in a small area. And I could see everybody, but they kept bumping into me. I could watch grass grow and trope according as the sun moved across the heavens, or clouds got between the light and the grass, and they went from being erect to turning over when the clouds were over. I had all kinds of phenomena like that. Energy flows within. I could feel the magnetic current, the magnetic field of the world, and orient myself according to that. So there was a lot of sensitivity going on, and a lot more I don't want to talk about, except in a book. I don't have to answer to anybody face to face. I thought I was becoming a woman, and I thought I was having a baby. That's the kind of delusions that I was having, doing too much meditation, alone, without a guide. So then I found out at Mount Baldy how to achieve totally empty mind, and that's by sitting very, very strongly in Padmasana or half lotus on a bench 2 feet off the floor, doing nothing except starting to work on a koan, whatever koan was given to me. And after about 10 minutes, I would feel my brain getting dense as a rock and heavy. And then all of a sudden it would sink inside of me, and I'd go unconscious. I was sitting up straight. I was not aware of anything. I wasn't even aware that I was conscious. And then that would drop. My center of consciousness would drop into my body, and my body would open up and become the world. There was no separation between me and the sound of the wind, planes flying overhead, or the calling of a bird. They were me. And this went on 8 or 10 times a day, depending on the number of meditations we did, especially during sessions. And we'd have koans to solve, like how do you realize God when looking at a fir tree? After doing this for a while, I went to International Buddhist Meditation Center in Los Angeles under Thich Thien An, who was a Buddhist bishop equivalent, and was there for maybe 7 years, listening to different traditions, because there was 5 or 6 Zen masters in the area, including Sun San Sunim. That's when I really got confused, because every Zen master was different, had different teachings, different koans. And I did a lot of reading because everybody else did a lot of reading. And I got more and more confused, except I really recognized that Zen had no love in it. So I went to Muktananda ashram, which was a mile or 2 away. And there I met Swami Shankarananda with his beautiful, beautiful sweet satsangs, and his beautiful music and the beautiful everything. And they always ended each session with the phrases, love yourself, honor yourself, bow to yourself. That was good, except I didn't know what a self was. I had been in Zen so long, all that I knew was emptiness. I didn't know any self anywhere. And I was with Muktananda for, 2 or 3 years. He came in 1980 or 81 to Los Angeles for 6 months. And I thought he was a fool, but I still loved the satsangs with the chanting music. Soon after that, I quit spirituality, because after many years of searching, like from 67 to 77, 80 to about 83, I had been with all these different gurus, Zen masters, and I didn't know a thing. I didn't have the slightest knowledge about anything. After reading hundreds of books, thousands of books, being on a ship, being in the desert, under 6 or 7 different Zen masters, under Muktananda, under Shankarananda when he was a Swami, and I knew nothing. All these things were just theories to me, just like economics had been. All bullshit. And I ran into Robert many years later, maybe 7 years later, 6 or 7 years later. And when I saw him, I talked to him, I knew he was for me. He talked like I thought a Zen master should talk, or a spiritual talk, a teacher should talk. He said, "You don't exist. You're not alive. Your body is illusory. The world is a mirage formed by the mind. Your mind is not your friend, Sebastian. Your mind is not your friend, Barty. Your mind is not your friend, BJ and Vesselina. Your mind is your enemy. You're always thinking. And with Robert, I got to a place where I had an awakening. I write about it in my book while taking a shower and asking who is the one that's feeling the water falling on his skin and looking inside and finding only emptiness. It was as rock hard as the hard vacuum of outer space. There was nothing there. There was no sense of I. There's no sense of even being alive. There was no sense of even sensing the body. There was no division between me and everything in the world. It's all one. It was a lot like my Mount Baldy experience, except with my eyes open. And for 6 months, I lived in this state. And at one point, I called Robert and said, "Robert, I'm scared. I don't exist." And Robert said to me, "Of course you exist. You're talking to me on the phone, aren't you?" So much for Robert's philosophy. He says all the time, you don't exist. But then when I said, "Robert, I'm frightened. I don't exist," he said, "Of course you exist. You're speaking to me, aren't you?" Meaning that in his real life point of view, he existed and I existed as separate human beings communicating, and that proved our existence. It wasn't a dream like he kept saying to everybody in satsang. That's when I began to understand that there is no truth. There is no truth at all. There are what I call convenient fictions, ways of understanding things, to put them in equations or in words or an operational standard that allows us to do things in the world, like create an atom bomb by understanding quantum mechanics and nuclear physics. We're able to put enriched uranium together in a mechanism that brings pre-critical masses together at a very quick speed, causing an atomic explosion. And if we put a lot of material around that, like lithium or some other material, we can create an H-bomb, with the atom bomb being a trigger to cause fusion in the lithium or other materials. But nobody has ever seen an atom. Nobody's ever seen an electron or a proton or a neutron or a boson or a pison, or whatever you want. All these subatomic particles are theoretical. Yeah, they can make tracks in one of those vapor chambers, but what does that mean? It's all based on interpretation. The spin of the particle, the charge of the particle, the uprightness or the downrightness of the particle, all these other things. It's all theoretical, but it works. And scientists say that's good enough. That's truth for our time. It works. And then we run into problems where it doesn't work and we have to change our theories, expand them, or scrap them completely. But there is no real truth in science because it changes. 1,000 years ago, the world was flat except for some Greeks. That was truth. 150 years ago, there was ether that electromagnetic waves went through. Einstein disproved that. There was no need for the concept of ether. Now we're still dealing with the dying credibility of general theory of relativity because we have to find a new theory that embraces both general relativity on the cosmological level and quantum physics on the microscopic, submicroscopic level. So although general relativity is still very useful as a predictor and a device for calculations used by physicists and astronomers and cosmologists, it's just a passing fiction. The new truth may turn out to be string theory or some other thing, but there is no truth in physics. Physicists know this. It's just a story. So, what does that have to do with us who are looking for enlightenment, who are looking for something better, who are looking to leave the mundane world and find elevation somewhere, to find a world that's not so full of shit as the one we live in, that's not so full of disease and death and sorrow and corruption as the one we live in? How do we get out of this world into enlightenment or truth or something higher, something more sublime than we have now? And thus we get into the problem of what the fuck do we do to get out of this mess? I screwed around for many years, trying one teacher after another, one book after another, and thousands of hours of meditation and self-inquiry. And so far as I could help, by the year 2000, I could not find a self no matter how hard I looked. I found only emptiness, and I was dwelling in emptiness until a woman came into my life and I fell in love. Now, this falling in love was not accidental. It seems that there are two major paths to enlightenment. One that starts with realizing emptiness or space, and the other that starts with devotional love. They're the same path, but they go in different directions. I started with emptiness, but it took me 25 years to get there. Bernadette Roberts, on the other hand, started as a Catholic nun, totally devoted to Jesus and going through periods of rapture, bliss, and unity consciousness, and gradually losing all of that, becoming more and more empty, which she called the calamity, just as U.G. Krishnamurti did. She's going in the other direction, away from bliss and love and devotion, towards emptiness and nothingness. So does this help you in any way clarify where you are? Of course not. You have no idea where you are, do you? You're hopelessly confused, aren't you? Aren't you, Veselina? You don't know which way to turn, do you? Up, down, sideways, be an introvert, be an extrovert, get a job, not get a job, come to the United States or not come to the United States, kill your parents or do suicide yourself. You don't know which way to turn. That's exactly how I felt for 25, 30 years. And then you say, well, how the hell can you tell me what to do? You're an asshole like I am. But I'm a lucky asshole. A woman came to me and I loved her and she loved me back. We felt extreme devoted love towards each other, surrender to each other, bowing down to each other, worshiping the other, and not worshiping their body. She wasn't worshiping my body. Who could worship this body? Nor did I worship her body. She was too skinny. I worshiped what was in her, her beingness, the energy I felt in her. The energy in her had a form to me. It wasn't a static form like a person or something like that. It was more like electricity or an angel that had no form, that was crackling in her, that attracted me, like a flame attracts a moth. And I learned the power of devotional love, of loving so strong, so deeply, and so surrendered feeling way, that the love became so intense that for a period of time, I identified as love. I wasn't Ed anymore. I wasn't a body anymore. I was love, love itself. And shortly after that, I had my third awakening experience of an entity arising within me with enormous power, with constant, brilliant white light as bright as 100 suns, but which did not burn. It was a white light tinged with blue that arose through me with this power that rose in my body and covered my whole body with power and light and extended outwards into space, just like Robert's experience was, or similar. After that time, I was never alone. This entity was in me and around me, comforting me. But it was not female. It was not she, like in Shakti is depicted. It wasn't he. It was androgynous. It didn't have sex. It had power. It had light. And lately, the last few months, I've managed to make friends with it. And I worship it now as a female image because it's easier for me as a male to give Shakti a sexuality, a gender, and to worship her as the mother or as the female friend. And I ask her things. I ask her for help. I ask her to guide me. This is mostly the result of talking to David Spiro up in Sedona. And Shakti has been really helpful since that time when I learned how to develop a personal relationship with Shakti within. Now, how does that help you? It doesn't help you at all. You haven't walked in my shoes. You haven't felt the things that I felt. You haven't experienced emptiness the way I did. Maybe you've done it your own way. You haven't loved like I loved this woman. You probably love deeper in a different way. So we have different experiential backgrounds. So our experiences will not be identical. They may be similar or even opposite. But there is an evolution. What I try to do, well, let's back up. A friend of mine, Jan Essman, is a genius, as he says so himself. His teachings are both theoretical and experiential. A lot of the stuff he talks about I understand and agree with. And a lot of the stuff seems very convoluted to me, and I can't grasp what he's talking about. But there's one thing I really do understand about Jan, is he doesn't understand that words and symbols are maps, not the thing themselves. And he truly believes in all of his statements as being utterly real, rather than provisional about a convenient fiction. This is where I begin to feel real truth. How do you find a teacher you can relate to? What can you do without a teacher? How do you not get lost in all the bullshit that covers all the spiritual trails? And there are so many, going in so many different directions. It's utter confusion out there in the marketplace, where there are really low-level teachers, middle-level teachers, high-level teachers, manipulative teachers, power-hungry teachers. Then there are teachers who know practically nothing, that are advertising, and there are teachers that know a lot and try to keep hidden, like Robert. A lot of us thought he was trying to keep hidden because of legal problems he was having at past ashrams, because of pending lawsuits and maybe a jail time if he ever got caught. That's why we thought he was being so secret, some of us who are more devious in our ways of thinking. But I think a primary discovery, now, there are so many experiences you can have. One of the most impactful is that state of absolute emptiness, where there's no sense of self anymore. There's no sense of presence, being alive. There's just emptiness that pervades everything. And out of that emptiness can come love and devotion, but sometimes it takes 15 years. Or you can start on a path of love and devotion and have it disappear and emptiness invade and take away all of your love, all of your devotion, all of your transcendental experiences, and just obliterate them into a hard vacuum of space, like happened to Bernadette Roberts. And you read her books, What is Self, Journey to Know Self, etc. And you wonder, what the fuck is she talking about? Because she doesn't talk like Robert. She doesn't talk like Ramana. She doesn't talk like Ramakrishna even. She doesn't talk like Aurobindo. All of these people talk differently and have different emphases, or emphasize different things. But there's one truth that Sun Sunim said to me over and over and over again. Shut the fuck up. Don't think about it. Just do. Live your life. Walk forward. Don't wobble. Believe in yourself. Trust yourself. But I couldn't do it when he was there with me. I didn't know what self was. How could I trust myself? It wasn't until I met Janet and I fell in love with Janet that I found a sense of self and could love myself and have that become love and have that become my guide, my other, in the form of Shakti. So what does it mean for you? Listen. Believe nothing. Don't get caught up by Jan Essman's ethereality, I guess you could say. his vast realms of explanation of mental processes and spiritual processes that become ever more refined. Don't get caught up in David's story either, or even my own. Realize that life as you know it, the mundane world you live in, whether it's in Rio, Thailand, the Netherlands, Bulgaria, Columbus, Ohio, it's all fiction. You have many interrelated stories about who you are, what you are, where you are, and what you want, and what you have to do. To me, spirituality, the first step is seeing through the mind and the domination of mind and words and concepts. The questions that come up: who am I? What's real? Is love real? Is my life real? Are you real? Is Maria real? Is Padma real? Is Ken real? Asking questions like this to yourself will fuck your mind up. Now, Robert said, you are not real. Ponder that, which means think about that. I say, no, don't think about that. Don't think about whether you're real or unreal. As Robert said, you're not real. Instead, sink into the confusion you feel inside of yourself. Find the sense of being lost and clueless. Listen to any concept: you are not real. Or another concept: you are Brahman. Ask yourself, what the fuck does that mean? I am Brahman. Or I am God. Then, what do? You do nothing. You do nothing about thinking. Instead, you sit in a chair or you lie down and you relax as much as you can. Now, most of us can't relax that much. There's always muscles that are tense in our back, our shoulders, our neck, our arms, low back, butt. And we can't relax into them. They're always tense, no matter how much we relax. But we can try to relax. We can try to feel everything. And when we're relaxing, we begin to feel our bodies. We feel our feet, our calves, the back of our legs as they sit on the couch or in the chair. We feel our butt, low back, upper back. Moving our neck, we can feel our neck. We can feel our throat where we speak. We can go through our head and feel our head inside and out, the crown of the head. And if we look long enough and are quiet enough, we can feel energies moving in our body. And the more we feel the energies, the more they grow. I remember Charlie from Spain, who came, stayed with us for a while, who looked dumb as a rock already, right from the first time I met him. But he didn't feel any energies. He didn't feel anything inside. So when we go out feeding the feral cats in the evening, I'd ask him, what's he feeling now? And where is he feeling it? And for, 10 days or so, he didn't feel anything. And then he said on the 11th day, 12th day, he started feeling energies near his heart. And they grew and they grew. Then he stayed with Dia for 3 or 4 days, and the energies increased. And he came back to our house, and they increased some more. By the time he was ready to leave, all that he was energies. They took full control of him. He was sitting on the couch by himself without any chanting going, and he was bobbing and weaving and totally oblivious to the world. The energies had filled him fully. Hear that, DJ? He felt the energies, and he just kept feeling the energies. And they grew and they grew and they grew until they took him over completely. Now, what does this mean for you? What's the teachings in this? The teachings are, shut the fuck up. Get out of your head. No mind, no confusion. No mind, no problems. It's when you recognize a problem and start dealing with it that the problem becomes real, so to speak, and takes over your life as you try to solve it by thinking. Instead, as much as possible, sink into your body. Do as little thinking as possible. And the way to do things will eventually emerge out of your body, your heart, your gut, and not from something your mind has done or processed. At least that's the way it feels. You're not doing anything except resting ever deeply, more deeply into your body. And Spiro says that when you're totally immersed in your body, feeling every atom, every movement of energy, every thought, every muscle fiber, then you're in Sahaja Samadhi. But you see, that's just another set of words. I use words like emptiness and Shakti or energies, but pay them no heed. Okay, so how do you find a teacher? Well, some of you have selected me. Some of you will select somebody else. More will come. Some of you will go. You'll find teachings that match your understanding, and then you'll be lost. Because then you're following your mind and what your mind tells you to do, rather than your heart and your gut, which is where you're really located at. The head swims with things to do, teachers to study under, workshops to take, books to read. But when you're in your heart and in your gut, you're much less likely to do anything because it feels so good to be there. You don't want to move. Then maybe with all the energies in your body, you begin to feel sexuality. You begin to feel having orgasms. Maybe at first genital orgasms, and then later they rise into the heart and into the head until your whole body is orgasmic. This is the first instance of Shakti coming alive in you. It's your initiation, so to speak. You're kind of Shakti pot. Or else you fall in love with a person, with a teacher. Chaitananda is surrounded by devotees who serve his every need, who put flowers on his doorstep every morning before he comes out of his room, and do what the hell they call that, puja, in front of his door. They love him, and they're bonded to him. He talks to them for 5 minutes a day, and they're filled with energy, and they continue on year after year being in his ashram, because they get energy for 5 minutes a day if he talks to them personally. To each his own. But what have I said that helps you? I said, shut the fuck up. Don't try to think your way out of this. Try to think what's the right thing to do. Who's the right teacher to follow? Is Buddha right? Is Robert right? Is Nisargadatta right? Is Ramakrishna right? Is Aurobindo right? Is the sixth patriarch right? Is Sansani right? How come they all talk differently? They all have different emphases. It seems like they exist in different universes, talking about enlightenment in entirely different ways. For example, David talks about pure beingness as the absolute. But Jan Essman says entering pure beingness is only halfway there. Who's right? How does it affect you? It just makes you confused trying to figure out who's telling the truth. They're telling their own truth. It's not your truth. What is your truth? So immerse in yourself. Immerse in your own experience. Sink into your gut, into your heart, and it opens a new world when you're no longer caught in your mind and thinking. But you know something, it's really hard to stay immersed in your body, your heart, your gut, and the energies when you have to work hard. It's okay when you just have to do a little work, but if you have to do heavy physical work or heavy mental work, it's very difficult to do because the energy goes to your brain so that you can think, or it goes to your muscles so that you can do. So you got to take time out for yourself several times a day to just sit in a chair and feel. Feel your breath entering your body. Feel the energies arising out of your spine if they do, or out of your pussy or your balls, if you're male or female. And what happens to that energy? What does it do? Does it kick you off? Does it get you feeling sexual? Who is feeling sexual? What are these sexual feelings like? Do they rise in the body into your stomach and then into your heart? And then do you have an orgasmic experience from the heart? Do they arise further into your brain so that your whole body is orgasmic with the energy ending up in the brain? And what kind of bliss and ecstasy do you feel then? Do you feel Kundalini in your spine rising up, going up your spine and then into the top of your head, maybe piercing your crown and going outwards and then coming back again down your face and back into your heart endlessly? Or do you feel Kundalini blocked in a certain part of your spine? All of these are just maps. What is Kundalini as experienced is different from Kundalini as a principle, as an idea, as an object. Is there such a thing as a Kundalini serpent arising in the spine, or is this only a way of telling a story to make what you're experiencing into some kind of a bigger story? And consider that the words that you hear from Jan, David, or myself, from Mamana, from Robert, are only stories to induce in you a certain kind of understanding and are not truth in themselves. But they're stories like, who is the one, the ancient story guy, the one I talked about, Troy. I forget his name. Who told stories to induce in you a mood, a feeling, an energy or ecstasy. Because I don't trust words. I don't trust words to point to truth, either ontological truth of that which exists, or epistemological truth of the ways we know through language, through experience. None of this makes any sense to me. In this world, I would be confused too, because there are so many conflicting points of view. Instead, I sink into my body. I sink into feeling. I feel the room around me. I feel my own body. I feel my sense of presence. I feel the flowing of energies within. And I have a sense of Shakti as an entity, as a lightness of being within me and above me, sort of the most subtle kind of part of my field of awareness. And I bow to her, ask for her help, and say, I really don't know what the fuck's going on. Show me the way. Show me what my way is. If I have any problems, please solve them or make them not problems for me, either by my own insight, giving me insight, or by resolving the problems in the external world. This is the easy way. You don't have to think too much. You feel instead, BJ. Not just try to feel Shakti, but feel everything. Put your fingers on the wall, the tips of your fingers, and feel what the wall feels like. Touch the wall with your tongue, with your nose. Get down on the floor and feel the floor with your hand. Feel the hardness or the softness. Feel what the pressure feels like on your hand. Go out in the moonlight, and what is your experience in the light of the full moon? Do you feel energy coming from the moon, or do you feel it robbing you of energy? Do the same whenever you encounter somebody. What do you feel in that encounter with somebody? You feel love? You feel revulsion? You feel you're being filled with energies, or they're sucking energies? You feel disdain or disgust for them? You dislike the way they dress? You feel like laughing at them and having pity on them? Or do you lift them up and make them a hero? You feel all of these things. You constantly shift from thinking to feeling until you become more and more into the subtle energies in you and around you that tell you what to do in the world, that lead you straight as an arrow every day to make decisions. You don't know whether they're right or wrong, but it doesn't matter because you have no concept of right or wrong, good or bad, good decision, bad decision, or of all the consequences. Now that I've utterly confused you, and not been helpful to you at all. Does anybody have a question? Barty, do you have a question? Sebastian, you have a question? Spencer, you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I just can relate to feeling a lot of confusion because the more I pay attention to other things besides my mind, it seems like, my mind will demand attention and I'll be wondering if somehow I'm failing other people. There's kind of that guilt that comes by that maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Like, what if I'm checking out too much? But I'm okay with that for now because I feel like there is some truth in that. I'll never have a definite answer. So, but I do relate to that confusion a lot of the time of just not knowing what to do and, becoming more confused sometimes.
It's wonderful. A dumb mind is a great mind. So become less confused by becoming dumber, where it never enters into your mind to question yourself and your behaviors and what you're doing. Just go for it. Walk straight ahead, as Sun Tzu would say. Walk straight ahead. Don't wobble. Don't wobble. The more intelligent you are and the more concerned you are about thinking for the right solution, the more you'll never reach a solution because you keep going around the golf cup like a ball, circling and never dropping inside. And when you let go of all the thinking, you can drop into the cup because your mind drops into your body and your whole body becomes your mind. And it's not thought so much as an intuition that's awakened in you. And there's still residual confusion until the mind knows its place as to follow the body's intuition. So it's not all over in one day. It's a process. It takes time for all of us. Mark, what have you to say today?
Not too much, Edward. I'm just enjoying watching your videos and your older videos on your website and digesting it all and seeing where it all takes me. But it seems that things are very straightforward for me. I just either, proceed or I don't. So I'm proceeding, and I have had this feeling of being on track for quite a while, which is a nice feeling.
Good.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Come on, VJ, I know you have a question.
I have a question.
Who speaks? Oh, Tonita. Yes.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, I'm actually feeling a little bit like that ball on the edge of the cup around, but it's not quite dropping. And I wanted to ask you about said in the last satsang because it's something I keep coming up against, that when I sit, when I meditate, there is very regularly now, I quickly come to that place where it does feel like I'm about to go unconscious. It's the best word. And when I heard you describe that the other day, I was like, yes, that's it. And I guess the only thing I'm sorry?
You
what?
fear that experience.
Do I hear it?
Fear
I
it.
feel it.
Do you
Fear
fear
it. Yeah, obviously there's something that isn't fully willing to let go, and I'm realizing a parallel with the energies, like when you talk about the energies completely suffusing the body. You know, for a long time I've had this intuition that an ultimate state for me was a kind of absolute stillness simultaneous with an absolute freedom of movement, you know, that there's just full, it was a kinesthetic thing that I could feel, to be fully in the stillness and fully the Shakti just freely moving with when the contractions and everything's cleared out. So that's coming online more. So yeah, I guess I'm just asking, could you talk a little bit more about that dropping out and through? And I love the way you described it as kind of like a circular experience, right? The mind gets heavy, it drops, it goes unconscious. And then when you talked about that coming into a different state, and then that eventually wears off, sort of.
Well, you just described it. I would have to repeat what you just said. I'll do it again, okay? At Mount Baldy, I would sit in half lotus or lotus. It doesn't work sitting for me in Japanese seiza style, with bent knees. That's not stable enough. But when you sit with perfect balance in Padmasana or half lotus, at first it's really painful on your legs and your back, and it gets increasingly painful, but you're in a situation where you're not allowed to move. Otherwise, they beat you with a stick. So you sit with increasing pain in your whole body, paralyzingly intense pain. And then all of a sudden, one time you sit, maybe the third time on day 3 of the session, and the pain starts coming, and then suddenly your body relaxes into that posture. And now you're perfectly balanced in that posture of perfect sitting. And you feel like you're getting dumb. It feels like your brain is growing heavy, like a brick, and it's solid like a brick, and you can't think. You may for a second think, I can't think, but even that goes. And the heaviness is in your brain, and it begins to spread to your face. And now even the sensory experiences aren't coming in. There's a blockage to any kind of input whatsoever from thinking
Yes.
or from the external world in terms of sounds. And then it keeps going, and about here, when it gets to your neck, there's absolute unconsciousness. You've entered a place of being asleep, yet aware, but you're not aware. You can't experience it because there's no mind to experience at that point. When you come out later, you realize that you've been conscious during that, or aware during that whole state, but there was no mind there observing it to make note of it, to talk about it. So at this point, it stays there for a while. You're in this sleep state. And then all of a sudden, it feels like it drops, like a rock, from your head down into your chest and into your gut instantaneously. And all of a sudden, the whole world explodes. Your body disappears. There's no you as Planeta, a person. There's no personal. It feels like total emptiness, like the emptiness of outer space. And in that emptiness, you hear things. A bird calling, a plane flying overhead, the wind in the trees. And I'm talking about this is happening at Mount Baldy. So these are the most primary sounds. There's no automobiles or helicopters there. But it could be the same if you were in the city, and in the state, you would feel one with the helicopter, one with the sounds of the cuckoo clock, one with the sounds of the television in the next room. body would be utterly relaxed. There could be no tension felt anywhere. And this is what happens. If there's no movement in your body, you can lose the sensation of the body. And that's the whole key to sitting in a strong fashion, in a balanced fashion, where even if you weren't attending to the muscles, they would balance themselves. And once you attain that balance point, the body can disappear from your perceptions, and then you'll just be aware of the external world and that you're one with the external world. But you won't be saying this, you won't be recognizing this with your mind. And you'll be in sort of a kind of bliss. And it's not a bliss like you feel an orgasmic bliss. It's a bliss of just being empty and in the world at the same time, or being the world at the same time. And this would usually last 20 minutes or so, and I begin to coming out of it to return to everyday life in the Zendo. My body sitting on a ton in a cold Zendo. And I'd come out maybe totally a minute or so before satsang, before that sitting session was over. And then they would end it and I'd be in the real world, ready to go walking in Kinhin around the Zendo, or walking outside for exercise for 5 minutes and then walking back inside. And this would repeat all day long for up to 7 sittings during a Rahatsu Sesshin. 7 sittings of maybe 2 or 3 sessions each time, and each time about 25 minutes. So there could be, it's heavy sitting in a Rahatsu satsang. That describes it as best as I can, but the feeling of, at first, having a mind become so dumb and so thick and so rock-like, it's scary because it's a new experience and you can't think. You think something is happening to you, you're having a stroke or something, but after a while it becomes immensely pleasurable to lose your mind, to lose access to the mind. The mind loses
Yes.
access to your body.
I intuit that.
What?
I said I intuit that, and I know that I've drifted close or through things like that, and there is something inside that is very drawn. And my question is, it feels like a state that one could live in. I mean, there's something about it feels very honest, that the mind is just not there. Like, if the feeling can function, who needs it,
Well,
right? Like,
the thing is, it doesn't stay that way. What happens is after you practice this for many years, you act from an intuitive place in your body, and the mind is just there as an observer or in the background that can take over if there's calculations that need to be done.
yes.
It's not that you live in that emptiness where you feel like a hard vacuum anymore. You actually combine everyday living life with having dropped into your body, and you maintain it by constantly scanning yourself, your muscles, the energies, any organ disease going on, but essentially staying in the energies and into emotions, love, compassion, feeling your muscles relaxing and relaxing and relaxing. So the key to everything is learning how to relax and let go of your mind and enter into your body and drop into your body.
Yes.
If my analogy, my little story about the experience in any way, how did it affect you? How did you feel it?
It was great. I definitely found myself tracking as you were speaking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, I recognize. It wasn't unfamiliar, and it kind of reminds me a little bit, like at the bottom of that state, I'm just speaking off the cuff here, but it reminds me a little bit of what I felt when I was reading Bernadette Roberts' No Self experience. And when I look at her eyes, when I look into her face, it's like, that's what I see. You can see the person's dropped out.
Yep.
That's what I see when I look at her.
Yep.
It's just gone.
I know. The strange thing is you can see that looking at a still photo of her, but when you know her personally and up close, she is hard to get along with. She is definitely a person.
I'm sure.
She's irascible, pugilistic, superficially kind and compassionate, but at the same time, she's kind of crusty.
Right. But that's the thing, right? Is that unless we do the work on the person, like you've said before, and other people have said, or Yuji Krishnamurti, like, he was like, go make money. You know, he didn't care about the person or the personal development or the kindness or the love. But sure, the awakening, the clear seeing was there. And so that
That's
just,
still your idea. That's your story. You're
right.
trying to make a story about it.
Okay, yeah.
Here's the rub. Here's the thing. Don't try to figure a story about how reality works or what you should be, whether you should be egoless or not, whether you should be compassionate a lot or whether you should be loving or not. Learn to use stories to change your reality around you, either by creating a different story of your life where you're more comfortable, or talking to other people in stories that change them in some way to get them out of their pain, or if you don't like them, to get them into pain. You'll learn how to use stories to move Shakti around. That's the proper use of stories. It's not creating models of the world or spirituality and how you should be eventually after you complete your spiritual sadhana.
Mm-hmm.
You play with words, like scientists play with mathematics and equations. And they say, well, if you have equations this way and you give this variable this value and this variable a different value, you assume this is this, then you can have a general theory of relativity, or you can have string theory, or you can have some other kind of quantum mechanics theory or relativity theory. But you play with it as if it's real. You just say that as if this is real, and it's not real. You know it's not real, but you try it on for something or other. When you talk to somebody, you vary your voice. You speak lower, slower, more deeply into your body, and see what effects it has on people. Or you talk about sexuality and how you feel it and the effect it has on people. I remember when I first met Dia, I think in 2010 or 2011, all that she ever talked about was sex, 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 sex. How she had sex with every guru at Self-Realization Fellowship when we were there. They were all having sex with her. It was all about sex all the time. She'd have her rituals with sex. And all of her thinking was bound around sexuality. It's all about sexuality. She had, I lent her a laptop because hers wasn't working. And one time I came up to her room and the computer could not be found. She had locked it away between the window on the fourth floor and the screen outside of the hotel window. And she put it there because it had been bad and it was polluted by porn, kiddie porn, children's porn. There was no porn there, but that was her idea. It's the infusion of sexuality. And sexuality, speaking about it constantly and in different ways, can have a powerful, powerful impact on other people. And you learn to use that sexuality to get what you want in terms of whatever you want. You use the Shakti for the same purpose, to get what you want. But by this time, you're so wise that you don't want something that's really going to hurt other people or really just stimulate yourself to just make, get yourself off. It's usually to get something like something to eat for the evening because you don't have any food or something like that, or to help some homeless person that's in desperate need. Okay?
Okay.
Did you get my email?
I don't know. When did you send it?
Last night.
I might not have read it yet.
Read it.
I will.
Okay. Any other questions? And Vijay, as to your desire to have stronger Shakti, it's not a seeking of a thrill. It's not seeking merely being a visitor in a Disneyland of sensations. The feeling of pure Shakti going through you is the beginning of true spirituality. So the desire for it is not thrill seeking, because you know better than that. It's because all of your life you really haven't felt it deeply enough, and you know it. You know that there's something missing in you in terms of sensitivity to your own feelings and emotions and to your own inner energies and to the love of another from outside. That you want to clear up that heaviness in your body and feel the joy of openly feeling feelings going through you like a wind, like a breeze. And you know this is where you want to be. And I wouldn't let anybody get in the way. I wouldn't let anybody insult you. Because I understand where you're feeling, what you're feeling. But I have to make you understand too that you have to pay for it. And I don't mean in money. I mean in waiting and in looking and in feeling and developing yourself until the explosion does come into you. It took me 40 years before the explosion came into me. So you just have to plug away and keep beseeching God for his or her grace. Keep coming to satsang. Keep feeling your family in satsang, because they all love you. You know that. They all care for you. And don't ever let somebody insult you like you've been insulted by others. I can't believe that it happened to you. Anyway, I love you all. Even those I've never seen, I can feel. So many of you are really making progress. Ken, Tonita, Enrique, even though he's quiet now, he knows it's better to shut up and not say anything. Max is going through different states. All of you. I love you all. I'll see you next Thursday unless I get caught up in moving this going through this move. Take care. I'll see you Thursday. Bye-bye. I love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.